Welcome to Ascending with Venus Castleberg, a space where we explore the journey of spiritual awakening, expanding your consciousness and raising your frequency to create a whole new world. We'll dive into the possibilities that open up when you choose to follow the whispers and trust your inner knowing. Each episode is designed to guide you in expanding your awareness, tuning into your intuition, and discovering the magic of your life every day. We'll talk about living aligned with your soul's purpose, going beyond limitations, and creating a life and a world worth celebrating. You are here to embrace who you truly are and step into the infinite potential that's waiting for you. Let's ascend together. And now, here is your host, Venus Castleberg.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ascending. So happy to have you here, watching now or in the future. Just so you know, today we do not have the phone lines open. We had to do a pre-record, so please post your questions, and I will gladly answer them later once I see them. But I have the honor and privilege of introducing a dear friend of mine who literally changed the trajectory of my life 23 years ago. And was just instrumental in me being on the path that I'm on now. And I'm honored to have Johnbro Wilkie with me. Welcome. So John has had lots of experience. He's been on Star Trek, Space Above and Beyond, Sightings. He's actually been an actor in those things. However, he's also had a lifelong fascination with space, with the cosmos, with, what's going on out there. And I would love for you to share, John, with our listeners, like, how did you get started on this path?
It is so good to see you after all these years. I think almost to the day, Ms. Venus, 23 years ago, I met you. Mm-hmm. And as you had mentioned, I affected your life. I think at the time that I met you may have literally saved my life. Mm-hmm. Considering that's another whole show right there. But I mean, it is reciprocal. And thank you for, mentioning that. Mm-hmm. I don't even have the words or the time to catch up with you. I've lived several lives, it seems, since the last time I saw you. And very proud to watch your evolution and your development. And it's very gratifying. It is a confirmation to me that, as you had asked me before, why I don't think I'm going crazy. My story began, my earliest memories. I think one of the first memories I had was probably in the early 60s, not long after President Kennedy had been killed. I was very young, but I can remember some of the more, traumatic or expansive experiences that happened to me. And during my parents' separation, I was staying at my grandparents' house in a place called Rosedale, a suburb of Detroit. And I was put upstairs into my grandfather's bedroom. And I just remember being on the bed and being in a very dark, room, but there was a bay window off to the left of me. And I think it was on the second story. And, kids will have dreams and all kinds of misconceptions, but I remember very clearly that I saw something all of a sudden seem to come in through the window that looked very much like Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas or whatever, a tall, spindly bobblehead guy. Mm-hmm. And to this day, I mean, that was more years than I even want to say, but to this day, I believe that actually happened. Mm-hmm. And when this thing walked over to me, I just came into a major screaming fit. And my grandparents came up there and they were very irate by this. And at that point, I was never allowed to go back to my grandparents' house to spend the night because they thought I was, having a nightmare or something, very persistent. Mm. It seemed to me that this figure or whatever kind of disappeared like below the bed, almost like it went under my bed. And that was just the beginning of having very odd things happen in my life that it doesn't happen often. For me, it isn't like turning on and off a water spout. It could be years in between, events or experiences, but I still say to this day, I believe that really happened. So that was, you asked me the first. I also believe that in my family, they don't remember, but I think this has been a generational thing. And my first introduction to paranormal type things, I believe it was probably extraterrestrial. I didn't know that name or that word back then. I think I was all of 4 years old.
Gotcha.
And that was just the first one. I could go on and on. Maybe you want to talk on your show.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for that. But then at some point, and this is going to date us both, but like at some point you were actually taping spaceships with VHS. Like what started you even curious about, like, what did you see that then made you go, maybe I should videotape this? Yeah.
Well, I'm also, my background, I was in the military. I was in the Air Force, and before anyone had ever heard of the place, one of my TDYs, one of my temporary duty assignments, was to go to Nellis Air Force Base, just adjacent to Las Vegas. And one day, I was a manager on a flight line during, oh God, a long story. But I was in charge of preparing, maintaining a squadron of F-15, fighter jets. And one of my supervisors drove up in a truck and said, I need you, you and another fellow named Tom, that we're going to go and assist another squadron that I think they were out of Virginia or something, right? So then they take us on a little pickup truck way out in the middle of nowhere. And then we ended up going to this back gate that now everyone in the world is aware of, the outside back gate of what they now called Area 51. Back then, no one had ever heard of that. And I remember once we went through the gate, we had military pull and do our background check. I didn't understand. They asked me to come there, but now they're looking at my background. And, I had all my badges, all my clearances. But once you go through that back gate, it's about another 45-minute drive through the mountains and down into this low-lying dry lake bed. And I remember nothing very unusual was there. Just old, it looked like Korean War era airplane hangars. And then they pulled out a motor, jet engine on a stand. It looked like a trailer, disconnected from the plane. And my supervisor asked me to check the oil on it, which doesn't really make a lot of sense for the time and the resources it took to take me away from my job. Because you could literally just tap the glass and see where the oil was. You might as well be pulling a dipstick on a car motor, right? Didn't make any sense, but so they took us back to base, and boy, I went on with my life. And I think it was around 1985, 86, I was in Los Angeles, literally in an apartment in Hollywood, where there's a news story coming out of Las Vegas, a fellow named George Knapp, who had announced that there was a secret base outside of Las Vegas where supposedly they were having alien technologies and all these crazy experiments going. And I immediately recognized what they were talking about. I went there, I didn't see anything weird, but supposedly all of a sudden, this is an alien, UFO hotspot. I didn't really think much of it, but when I went to sleep that night, I started a long series of dreams that lasted probably for months. And I had a very different recollection from when I did during that time, during that experience of actually going there. Almost as if it would had been some kind of a mask memory, or, So beginning with the fact that I think the government probably does some odd experiments on their enlisted personnel. And then once you widen your horizon on something like this, once you believe one aspect, it has a tendency that maybe your paradigms can shift a little bit. I think you had spoken about when you're taking another transitional step, right? It allowed other things to come in and allowed me to consider maybe there was some phenomenal aspects to life that I hadn't really taken into account, that I should be more aware and more, more open, I think, to such things. And that was just the beginning. So early to mid 90s, I was in Los Angeles. I was in the valley during the Northridge earthquake. Okay. That was probably 1994 or so. And I had noticed a lot of things very blatantly flying over Los Angeles. I mean, it happened so often that I could take friends with me out and they would see their first UFO, I didn't say it was alien. I just said it was something that was very hard to explain and did not look conventional. And it happened so many times that I felt that there must be a way to hasten the process. If I could go out and within 2 hours find something, very possibly, within 10 minutes, we could find something. So I just began absorbing every, piece of information, watch every show, every magazine article I get my hands on. And there's a fella who is now very famous in the UFO genre media. His name is Preston Dennett. He interviewed me for MUFON of LA. He wanted to do a magazine article. And I went to his home in Chatsworth, I think it was, up on the northwest side of the San Fernando Valley. And he just handed me a stack of UFO magazines, UFO Digest, UFO World, whatever. And I'm just voraciously absorbing everything I could. And in one article, there's a fellow, I think his name was William Hamilton Jr., who wrote a story called Sky Dancer. And in this article, he had talked about a sheriff about 20 miles north of me in the Antelope Valley area, that almost on a daily basis, they were seeing one of these silvery spheres just hovering. But when they would put their binoculars on it, it would take off and it would disappear, almost like a baseball disappearing from when it's coming down, when they hit a fly ball and they look up and they can't see the ball because of the sun. I thought, what if that wasn't just an accident? What if it was purposely done? I'm still not sure, but so how do I look at the sun or near the sun without looking right at it? Because obviously that will harm your equipment or your eyes very badly. It'll make you go blind. So I came up with this simple diagram. I drew a little picture that I would get underneath the overhang of a house, apartment, whatever, and block it right to the edge of the sun where you could see the glow. I called it the corona. I don't know if that's the correct terminology. And immediately when I started doing that, I began seeing irregular geometry and what at the time a lot of people thought was insects or cottonwood or something. But when they start coming out in geometric patterns, triangles, squares regularly, I'm starting to think there's something up to this, right?
Right.
In the meanwhile, back then, we did not have high definition cameras. We did not have consumer available infrared or night vision. I think nowadays, the biggest thing you could have, the best tool you could have is something called full spectrum. UFO hunters, ghost hunters, they all use this equipment now, that it sees beyond something they call the Hertzian wave, which is the humans, light, the human's ability to see what spectrum, how far from, infrared to ultraviolet, we do have a range that we are within, right?
Mm-hmm.
So nowadays you can get technology that you can see things in a clear blue sky that you can't see with your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And we were kind of in the Stone Age as far as technology. The internet had just started. We had what they called dial-up, America Online. Do you
I'm
remember
sure
that?
there's people that don't. I remember it, but I'm sure there's people listening that are like, "What is he talking about?"
When I went to college, the mouse on your computer did not exist yet.
Right.
So once I started that, I mean, I'm not trying to convince anyone, but I'm just telling my truth. I've literally seen tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of what people would call UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
And to the point where it repeats enough that we can start studying it,
Mm-hmm.
ad nauseum. At some point, you can begin to recognize and graph, draw, reproduce, craft what they really look like.
Mm-hmm.
I got so much of it that I actually forwarded it to some of the big shows at the time. I don't know if people remember the SIGHTINGS show, or they had Paranormal Universe, or, excuse me. My allergies are kicking me a little
Bless
bit,
you.
sorry. But they actually had some of the top people in media, and JPL reviewed some of my videotapes, and the response was they believed that what I thought I was seeing, I really was seeing. That was just the introduction to it.
Right.
So I ended up in the late 90s going on all the radio shows and all the TV shows of the genre, and it was kind of amazing to me. I'd be willing to say probably 500 million people were exposed to it if they wanted to look at it, if they wanted to pay attention. Magazines, internet, TV, radio. And I guess that would be considered famous. But fame is also not something that follows you forever. You get your 15 minutes and 20, 30 years later now, I don't know. Some people remember the experiment. They don't remember me, which is fine because it's hard to live a life normally and have that, stigma around you. Maybe you've run into some of that along the way, trying to, compartmentalize your life.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead.
Yep.
I'm sorry, Ms. Veneza. I can talk up a blue streak, right?
Yeah, no, you're great. That's awesome. I love that. It actually reminds me of some of you might have heard this, but like the indigenous tribes, when the first ship came to the I believe it was to North America, they couldn't even see the ship because it wasn't in their belief system. So I think that's part of it too. It's not just that we can't see it, but we also, if you don't believe in it, you also can't see it, right? There's some block to how much we can perceive when we have a belief that it doesn't exist, right?
I think the human mind definitely does filter out things that we do not believe in. And that's something I've spoken of to people too, that you would come to that conclusion.
Yeah.
I had a friend of mine once said that he thought that if there was a cat wearing a top hat, playing a banjo on a street corner, if people walked by them later on, they would remember that they saw a mailbox sitting there or something. Meaning people are not going to see what they don't believe in.
Right.
Anyways, I wanted to show you something. That did turn into a book, the story of what I was telling you. And the response that somebody will get if you go out into public and try and introduce a new paradigm, I mean, it was just brutal. How many times I've been insulted or, accused of fakery or something, and or being told I was trying to do it for the money. That was a good one. In 30 plus years, whatever, I think I've probably taken home $300. So I'm not very good at the accounting aspect of that, apparently. Right?
Well, I've also wrote wrote a book, and it was a new release bestseller. And like you, there's not a lot of money to make in books unless you're like an international bestseller and have sold millions. So, um, cool. Well, I love like that. And just so you guys know, I had the honor of reading that book when it was still in a 3-ring binder and he had typed it up. And I consumed that book from cover to end. I couldn't put it down. I was like so enthralled by everything he shared. And it really did. It really opened up something for me. And then I had the privilege of John one day was like, hey, let's go out and see if we can see spaceships in the middle of the day, right? So I'd seen UFO stuff in the middle of the night that didn't really make sense. I was like, yeah, planes don't usually do a 90-degree turn kind of stuff. But to go out in the middle of the day, and John, I don't know if you're just like this magnet for them, but he just literally like said, we're kind of looking in between clouds. You point to like this gap between these clouds, and 3 rods, one right after the other, fly in between that space. And my entire reality shifted. Like I was just like, did you see that? You were like, did you see that? I was like, oh my God. And I always knew they were out there, but it was like to have that proof in that moment and having you with me was just like, it was a paradigm smash. It was like, I even got depressed after that for a little bit, just like, well, what does this mean, So.
In some ways, it can feel like you're losing part of your innocence. But yeah, I remember, I think, Mission Bay, was it?
Yep,
You were on a
that's where we were.
bicycle. You were on a
Yep.
bicycle. I was running down the path doing my little jogging thing. I had to go off to work, and you had to drive off on your bike with that thing in your head now. Like, what did I see?
Yeah.
Because the first thing that happened to me, to this day, when I see something phenomenal, I spend a little time probably in denial or trying to talk myself out of it. That's a human, nature. I think the more that I see, the more that I know, the more accepting I am. But I consider myself a bit of a conduit, or because again, it doesn't just turn on and off like a faucet. It could be years in between incidents, but if something phenomenal happened to you, are you going to accept it? Are you going to believe it? Or are you going to talk your way out of it?
Right.
And my confirmation was the big boys in media taking my videos and analyzing them and telling me that there really was something to it. That did not really tell us what it was. But, you got past the first part of your 10-step program, admitting that you have a problem,
Well, and that's the reason for this show too, right? Or this whole series that I'm doing is like, how do you know you're not crazy? Like, I think for me, it's just been confirmation after confirmation. But at first, you are. There things happen sometimes when you're by yourself and you don't have somebody to confirm it. And there is that moment of like, I think I might be crazy. I might be losing my mind here. Like, did this really happen?
Would you mind if I had spoke a little bit about one of the first incidents I had when I went to your place? Do you mind if I talk about that stuff?
Not at all. Go for it. Yeah,
well,
I think just so you guys know, I think John and I are both activators in different ways. So I do know that I activate people and he activates people in a different way too. So
well, I don't really intend to, but I
right.
mean, it comes down to when the spirit, for lack of a better term, speaks to you, are you listening?
Yeah.
Do you believe your own self? Do you believe your own heart and mind and your spirit? I think only because it's happened to me so many times, I'm accepting of it. But again, it can be long terms in between. And I wanted to bring up one incident and it's in my book, The Angel's Jest. I mean, I basically wrote a book about that 100 days that I knew you back in the day, Ms. Castleberg, because this lady literally saved my life by just the interaction and the path that it put us on. Because I was in a really hard, dark place at the time, and that's why I feel like this full circle today, talking to you again. I mean, this means a lot to me. This is like connecting something inside me, and I hope it does for you. And I know we had spoken about such things, but I think I had been at your place and you had made breakfast, and it could have been vegetarian bacon and eggs and stuff like that. And at the time, it didn't sound very appetizing because it was new to me, but it's very enjoyable. I appreciate that. I remember it. But we were at your dining room table, and there was like a china hutch or something against the back wall. And I think you were saying a prayer, and I kept hearing it sounded like a little silvery bell, just a little ding ding. And I asked you if you heard it, and you weren't sure what I was talking about. And then I heard a little giggle in the corner. And then there was this little voice that was mumbling something. It's, you know. And it wasn't a full-on observation, but I got these flashes in my head. I didn't know if it was really in front of my eyes or if it was inside of me. These little beings that, for lack of a better term, it just looked like a cherub in a Renaissance painting. Excuse me. And please repeat yourself. I'm asking it. I don't know if I was even saying it out loud, but you're looking at me, say, John, are you all right? But this little voice was saying, tell her. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. What? Tell her. So I'm thinking that's it. I'm going to tell my new friend here what I'm hearing and saying, and she may never speak to me again, right? But it was basically telling me, because I listened and I was already aware of that stuff, to tell you that number one, they were there, and number two, if you tuned your ear right, you'd be able to hear them, and you wouldn't even need me as an interpreter. Right. And that was like one of the most outrageous experiences of my life, to actually have that confirmed, you know. And but then a short period of time, I think you were teaching me, you know. I wasn't especially a religious person, but I had it came to me a lot in dreams. I remember a very tall fellow, probably 9-10 foot tall, standing by a tree, and he actually had wings. And just a dream, whatever. I don't want people to think I'm just crazy, but this was my interpretation. And he referred to you as star, or like a star child. I don't know if that was the exact term, but sometimes they're speaking in Latin, or that maybe, you know, I've heard stories that if you meet an extraterrestrial, that you're immediately connected in a telepathic connection. It's not you, but you can do it as you connect to them, the conduit part, right? And this fellow told me that I was going to know you for approximately 100 days, and then you're going to go off and you're going to be a teacher and a healer. And at the time, that was very upsetting to me, because I mean, I just met this pretty amazing person, you know, and I think I had told you that I thought you were going to be a healer and a writer, a teacher. I think I was right. I didn't know if that was correct, right? You are these things, correct?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
And that took years for me to digest, and I ended up, you know, publishing a book about that incident. The names were changed to protect the guilty, but the story was there.
Yeah.
That was just a beginning, right? And like I said, I think I've lived a couple lives since I last saw you.
You and me both. You and me both.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. We definitely have more to cover. I will ask more questions. We're just going to take a short break. We'll be right back after. Yep.
Om Times TV. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Welcome forward, everyone. And so John brought up one of the times that he spontaneously started channeling at the breakfast dinner table. He did that multiple times in our 100 days together. And we also had an experience that I'm going to share a little bit about what happened for me, and then I'd love to get John's take on this. So he wasn't a religious person, but at the time I was going to church, so I dragged him to church one day. But he had taught me kind of how to practice seeing the spirit realm with my physical eyes. So I was playing, and I was blurring my eyes, and I was like, oh yeah, I see little like angel, like cherub beings flying around. How cool. And then spontaneously, don't know where it came from, 3.5-foot pink alien, big eyes, shows up. And I grabbed John's knee, and he's like, what, are you okay? And I'm like, there's a pink alien here. And he's like, yeah, that's grandma. I'm like, grandma? Are you an alien? Like, you never talked to me about pink alien being grandma. I was like, and then of course I couldn't say any of this in church. So I'm just like, okay, cool. Awesome. Like, let's talk about this later. But that was also like, we had already seen the spaceships, but then when that happened, I think I definitely was like, no more, kind of shut my sight down, didn't play with that for a little while. So
my memory is being at a church, and they had the worship team on stage. They were playing a set of music, and I saw like an orange reddish flash. And then you grabbed me so hard, of like, it was seriously hard. I'm like, are you okay? Like, you can like go on me, you're breaking my knee. But then you described what you saw. I think Whitley Strieber referred to it as Pinky. The point being is, these are not new things, and there are many more witnesses than have a tendency to come forward or make it to a podcast or get into the public eye. And again, at the time, I did not necessarily know these things. I did not believe in them, but when the circuit connected, I felt compelled to just say what I saw and what I thought about it. Because I do not, to this day, I do not believe myself to be a channel or a psychic person. I refer to myself as empathic, because that's the easiest way for me to describe it. But when the circuit connects, just kind of blurting out and see, 90% of it will be accurate. I don't care who the psychic is. I've never heard of anyone that was 100% accurate. If they are, beware of them, I think, right? But we are.
So why did you call her grandma? Where did the grandma thing come from?
I think because, honestly, the best way I can delineate is I compartmentalize myself. I don't speak about these things. I was married for 14 years, and during COVID, I got divorced, and it was not something that ever came up to the family. They didn't know that part of me.
Mm.
And it was just easier because, I was working for the church for 10 years. I was an employee of the church up in a big mega church up in Michigan. I was in the orchestra, and we would do a lot of the big stage productions for Christmas and Easter and all that. So, I mean, it's kind of taboo. If you bring that in, a lot of those folks, the Lutheran, were going to kind of think that maybe it was the dark side working you and they'd want to heal you. My personal feeling is it's kind of all meshed together. If you believe in aliens, doesn't mean that God or Jesus is no longer valid. And a lot of people, in my opinion, I'm just, like I say, when I meet the right kind of people at the right moment, and I just interpret what I'm hearing, and they respond that they see it too, or it's relevant to the time in their life, that it seemed like just random by accident. It does seem like fated in a lot of ways. I feel like meeting you was certainly fated. And I feel like I'm talking to a family member, It's been a while since I've talked to you, but I mean, I don't know what to call you, actually. And I don't mean that, I'm not trying to get in your space or personal, but I mean, you're a lot of things to a lot of people, and you are to me. To have that moment and the timing of it when I met you, and you showed me the therapies, the people that would help me with my pain through that accident. I don't know if you remember all that. I had just been in a real accident about a week before your birthday, almost to the day that we're speaking now. And yeah, it's emotional. There's a lot there. I ended up writing a book about it. So.
Right. That was 23 years ago. Yeah.
Do you do numbers at all? I'm not really into it. Does the number 23 mean anything to you? That comes up a lot. I've heard other people say that, but
well, in numerology, you
23.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, in numerology, you add the numbers together, so it's actually a 5. And the 5 is my archetype. I'm a 5. So it's my life number, my life path number. So
I remember you were about a week away from your birthday. I think you told me it was your 7th birthday or something like that because of the leap year stuff, right?
Yeah.
Almost to the day when I first met you, we are talking now. So I think that's interesting.
That is.
As a side note, you're going to a seminar in Carlsbad or San Diego?
Yeah, so I've been asked to be a keynote speaker in San Diego at the Live Your Power Expo. So I'm doing a talk, and I'm actually going to share a lot of our story that we talked about today about seeing the pink alien and then I'm doing a workshop, Psychic Development 101, at the same place, and it's actually free. So if anybody's in the area, come on out.
Well, it's a long way from Central Texas. I'd love to see that, but I didn't know if life would ever reconnect our paths or not, and occasionally I see a message through Facebook or something, but I'm just having this flood of memories now. So you're an influential person in my life, and I really do credit you for saving my life at that time,
Thank you, Joe. So just want to circle back because I don't think you really touched on it. Just like where did the term grandma come from? Like pink alien.
I'm sorry.
Like, oh, that's grandma.
I think that because, it's when I start to remember things or allow myself to remember, it's like I don't know how to really put this correctly. I'm not being quaint or it's like there's more than one version of me. Excuse me. It, when you have dreams, when you go to sleep at night, where do you really go? Or maybe if I had met these people, if I had been abducted, as they say, I don't think that's a good term.
Right.
And then they make you forget that it happened. Because these characters are very familiar to me, although I don't have a lot of experience in my 3D, life here. But
Oh, I gotcha.
that I referred to her as a person, but that person used to call me little one. And I'm 6'5", 225 pounds or something like that. I'm not a little guy, but I guess everything is relative. Or so. Oh yeah, that's Like, wait a minute, how did I know that? When you start
cool. So it was just an intuition, kind of a knowing. Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
Well, I have some memories that I can't access easily all the time. You know what I mean? It's
sure.
You have to find other people that reconnect you, and it's like a circuit that goes both ways.
Yeah.
I recently had a young man come to me that he called me Uncle John. His dad and myself have been friends since we were little kids, and a very unlikely witness, but just felt comfortable enough. I think it was literally the same day or the next day that I had reconnected with you on Facebook, and this big flood. As soon as I, hit, send to Venus, I get this big flood of people reconnecting with me. The same day, it was bizarre, right?
Yeah.
So he started telling me some very harrowing stories of something that happened to him, and he described literally meeting God and what it looked like to him. And there's just no way this guy could know these things from watching TV or a video. And I recognized it right away.
Right.
And I don't know if it's conventional in the Abrahamic version, the Holy Bible as we know it.
Right.
It's completely interchangeable, but it seems like it's kind of his version, or a lot of the church's version, seems rather contained in a box. And I felt like I went a little bit outside the box. I hope I said that well. Because you can believe in both sides and both things. And
right.
so all of a sudden this young guy starts talking to me, and I find myself counseling him on things that I know, but in daily life, day to day, I don't know. It's when the connection was made, all of a sudden it just comes pouring forward. And then when they disconnect, it goes away again, right?
Right.
How do you know you're not crazy? Well, number one, I think people like Ms. Castleberg here is a confirmation. You can repeat the same stories without me sitting down and comparing notes, and it's been a couple decades, right?
Yeah.
And just you find out later that, wow, it really was real. You really were right. But he described, his version of God, and it was, right on, perfect match to my version of God, right? I just lost my breath there for a minute.
That's awesome.
Just flooding through again. See what you do to people miss. All right.
And I think that go ahead.
It is not, what I have done in my life, being able to play around in Hollywood, being able to be the guy in the UFOs, I can't make it my identity. Just like being able to occasionally have these conversations or being able to empathically share something. Every once in a while, I run into a person where I know way too much about them. And it's not the bad stuff, not the hurt stuff, but it's not my identity. It's something that I got to do. And I don't believe it really is emanating from me. I think it's kind of, a gift or something that I get to participate in. I am kind of like the sign language interpreter or somebody trying to convert Spanish to English, you know.
Well, you're definitely tapped in, because I was actually just thinking, so how do you know you're not crazy? And then you're like, so how do I know? I didn't say it out loud. I was like, okay,
Yes,
so you
well,
heard me.
I think you get confirmation from people in life all the time.
Yeah,
I just had another memory. If we have enough time, I want to drop this in.
absolutely. Go for it.
Because I don't
Yeah.
question myself. I've had enough experiences that, can I be inaccurate? Can I be a little wrong? Yes, absolutely. But I keep it flowing. I let it happen. And I always try to be respectful and not damaging. If I saw anything too dark, I might not just blurt it out. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying anything. I just see golden light around you, Miss Castleberg. But I think it was about 2003, 2004. I was at my mother's home in Michigan, a little cottage by a lake, right down the street, by the way, from where the original term swamp gas reflecting off Venus and all that came from. A little place called Dexter, Pinckney, Michigan. Anyways, I'm at the sink. My mother is to my left. She's cooking. And all of a sudden, my grandmother, who was a little short thing, who's been gone since 40 years, I can see her out of the corner of my eye, and she's frantic. John, you have to tell your mother. You have to convince her that I did love her. And I'm like, wow, how do I say this to my mother? And my mother was a little loopy too. Can you imagine somebody that produced me? She's got to be a little loopy, right? Dude, tell her, just like, you know, another version of the little cherubs at your house.
Yeah.
And I said, Mom, I don't know how to tell you this, but, you know, we called her Nai. We were too young to say grandma, so we gave her a nickname, Nai. So Nai is standing here trying to tell me to tell you that you don't believe that she really loved you. And she says emphatically, and my grandmother was desperate. Like it was necessary to her that her daughter got that message. And my mother she wasn't wired the same as a lot of mothers. She was kind of the opposite of your mother, Venus. Your mother's always very supportive, and she's, you know, she's right there. You guys are soulmates too. I know that. But my mother was very disconnected, and she just fought it. She goes, I don't believe it. You don't believe that I'm having this conversation? No, I don't believe what she's saying to you. But my mother was the kind of person, she'd stand before God, and God would say, so what about this? And my mother would say, oh, you're making it up. You know, she would tell God he was making it up. We could go on for hours. But I believe after we pass, we do go through a filter, in my opinion, and hopefully revert to a better version of ourselves. And I don't even know why I'm telling you this, probably because it's you. All right. After my mother passed, a couple of days later, I was out in my garage and I heard a cat just meow several times. Meow. Then I realized it wasn't a cat. It was my mother's voice. But my mother had suffered a very bad accident. There was more bones broken than there were not broken, and she had severe brain trauma. And I realized the voice I was hearing was my mother's voice after her injury. And possibly if you don't make amends, if you don't, you know, ask for forgiveness or, you know, align yourself with God, maybe you don't get to go back to your best self, or there's a period of time. After she left, it seems to me her damaged self was what was on the other side, and that's horrific to me. That's very sad. I can only hope. I don't know why I brought that up, but I've lost a lot of people, and to the one, every person I've ever lost in my life, at some point after they were gone, came back for a moment or in a dream or whatever, squished my arm or touched my face just to let me know they still exist and they were okay.
Yeah.
after my brother passed away in 2004, I had a dream that all of a sudden he was in a bar by a pool table, and he's wearing a Hawaiian shirt. And if you knew my brother, he wouldn't be caught dead in a Hawaiian shirt. He was much more of like a Texas rodeo bucko redneck, right? But he said, I'm okay. Don't worry about me. And, I'm doing okay. And he went back to playing pool. And then a couple of days later, my big sister calls me. She says, John, I had a dream about Randy. I said, really? Tell me about it. She goes, well, he was wearing a Hawaiian shirt, playing pool, and telling me he was okay. That is so far beyond the realm of coincidence. You know what I mean? So
Right.
How would the spirits and how would our past, contact us, especially if we weren't spiritually ready for the full-on, apparition?
Yeah.
Because you still have that deniability. Oh, it's just a dream, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In some form that is still comfortable and not too threatening to you. I'm literally.
Yeah.
And when my mother passed away, she contacted me also very briefly, told me she was okay, and then she ran down the hall. This was 2012, and my big sister was staying with me at my house there. She had the guest bedroom. And then the next morning, she came down for breakfast, and I said, so Lori, tell me about your dream. She's like, who are you? You know what I mean? She said, well, Mom came to me and said she was okay. So how do you know you're not going crazy? These are the kind of confirmations, but you still have to trust yourself. And I would ask your audience, if you were to see anything spiritual, UFOs that you did not believe in, would you talk yourself out of it? Or would you hold that little piece of credulity, credibility, and work on it, let it process? You know what I mean? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think I tell people this all the time, just trust yourself. Trust what you know. Like, instinctively what you know. Like, that happened. You know what you saw. Now, yeah, but like John says, you can easily talk yourself out of it for sure. But you still have something in the back of your mind that goes, I know that was something. I know that I saw something, or I know that I felt something. For the longest time, my spirit team had to touch my shoulder and tingle just to get my attention, because after the pink alien thing, I was like, I'm done playing. And then I had that woman crying outside my ear at the graveyard. Remember I was with you then too. And I was just like, nope.
We were having lunch. You had brought a lunch to Junipero Park. I think it was the church over by Junipero. And
it was the Church of Roses
we were having something to eat. And I just remember, first of all, seeing in the distance a funeral procession coming from our left. We're having our little sandwich. And something went past me that sounded like a chattering of a wood chime, like a real fast staccato wood chime, click, 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 but it had that sound to it. And I saw a white ball of light go flying over there. And then the funeral procession came up. And I think you said, did we just see the spirit of this person going to meet with their family? It's one thing to hear a story like that. It's yet another to see it. And then when you're in the presence of another person and you both see it.
Yeah.
I have so many experiences like that. Boy, I couldn't tell you. Some of my most outrageous, alien sightings, for lack of a better word, extraterrestrial sightings. There was someone with me that also saw it. That was the first time. I had a friend of mine in LA. We're standing up talking probably 3 feet away, and something ran between us and took a left turn in an apartment. And he said to me, did you see that? I don't know if you remember Sean when we went to Big Rock up by the Lumerian, ruins up there. Anyways, we had lunch with this screwball musician in Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
But he said, well, did
Yeah.
you see that? And I said, yes, I did. He says, oh, yeah, well, what was it? Because he thinks he's going to catch me, right? I said, well, it's a little guy about 3 foot tall, like see-through. He thought I was going to say an orb or something, right? And I just watched the hair on his arm just coming up. And he says, why didn't that freak you out? And I just told him, because I've been trying to let you know, man, this is not new stuff to me. It doesn't happen every day, sometimes long periods in between for me. I don't really spend a lot of time seeking it out.
Yeah.
But when it does happen, are you paying attention? And will you please trust yourself to know that your experiences are real? Or if your paradigm is open, then you can allow yourself to bring in more and expand your horizons on it, because and it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's not
Thank you
always
so
fun.
much.
Some of it hurts, but it's worth it, you know.
It totally is. Yeah. And thank you. Thank you, John, so much. This has been wonderful to reconnect with you. And thank you for everything that you shared with us. I hope you guys out there realize you're not crazy and hang in there for the next episode. We'll see you next time.